You know, people always tell you, don't mix family and money. And for the longest time, I thought that was just an old cliche. The kind of thing bitter uncles say at Thanksgiving dinner when they've had one too many glasses of wine. Hi there, my name's Emily Tran. I'm 32, born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. I'm an interior designer, been doing it for nearly a decade now. I specialize in modern minimalist spaces with a cozy, lived-in vibe, which, if you saw my apartment at the time, you'd probably chuckle. Trust me, it was still a work in progress. Anyway, 2 years ago, I decided to make a bit of a change. My old apartment lease was up. My last big project had wrapped, and I figured, why not move a little closer to family? Specifically, my sister Jessica. Jessica's 2 years older than me. On the surface, polished, successful, intimidating. She runs a boutique property management company, mostly small apartment buildings in and around Vancouver. For years, she'd been the golden child of the family. You know, the type straight A's. Flawless LinkedIn profile. Always the one mom bragged about at brunch. I took a different path. More creative. A little messier. The artsy sister. And to be honest, we weren't always close. Not for lack of trying. But life happens. You drift. Little things add up. Old resentments linger. But that winter, something in me wanted to rebuild that bridge. So, when Jessica casually mentioned she had a newly renovated unit coming available in one of her buildings in Kitsilano, I jumped at the chance. Prime location, charming space, and hey, living in a building she managed might even give us a chance to reconnect. Jessica seemed amused, maybe even pleased when I told her I'd take the place. She offered a good deal on rent, $200 for a bright one-bedroom with hardwood floors and tons of light. I signed a lease, moved in a few weeks later, and settled into my new life. For a while, it was nice. We'd grab coffee on weekends. She'd text me little tips about the neighborhood. I thought maybe we've turned a corner. Maybe this is the start of something better between us. I should have known better. Looking back, there were signs, the occasional sharp comment, like, well, at least one of us owns property in this market. Or the way she'd remind me half joking, half not that I owed her for the good deal. But I brushed it off. Old patterns, right? Just Jessica being Jessica. Then came that email. It was a crisp Monday morning, February. Gray sky. First coffee still in hand. I was checking my inbox before heading to a client meeting when I saw her name pop up. Subject: rent adjustment notice. I clicked, and there it was. One cold paragraph, zero warmth. Effective next month, your rent will increase to $6.800 per month, reflective of current market conditions and building improvements. Please confirm receipt. I stared at the screen. My coffee went cold in my hand. 6 dry. ETO. Tripled. No notice. No discussion. No reason. Other than what looked like pure greed or worse. Some twisted family power play. My heart pounded. For a moment, the world blurred a little. My first instinct? Call her. Demand an explanation. Yell. Maybe cry. Even. But then I took a deep breath. No, I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I closed the laptop, let the emotions settle, and slowly, an idea began to form, one that would take patience, precision, and a very well-timed reveal. Because what Jessica didn't know was that I had a little secret of my own. I pushed away from the table, still numb, but something cold and focused was starting to build under the shock. No rash texts, no frantic calls. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out an old leather notebook, half planner, half personal archive, and started flipping. Page after page of property notes, dates, contacts, and there, tucked into the back pocket, the document I'd almost forgotten about. I'll explain. See, about a year and a half before I moved into this apartment, I'd taken a hard look at my finances. After 10 years in the design business, between steady client work and a few lucky investments, I was sitting on enough savings to finally make a big move. Vancouver's property market is brutal, but I'd done my homework. I knew where the opportunities were small, older buildings with potential, and through a quiet tip from one of my real estate contacts, this very building had come up for private sale. At the time, Jessica had just started managing it for a client who was quietly offloading assets during a divorce. She thought she was brokering a deal for an outside buyer, but through some legal gymnastics and the help of my lawyer, I was that buyer. Completely separate LLC, under my own name. It wasn't personal then, just business. I had no intention of throwing it in her face. We barely talked about it after. She kept managing it for her fee. I liked the distance. It was clean. But now seeing that email, the pieces clicked. Jessica must have assumed I was just another tenant, caught under her thumb. She still didn't know that I owned the deed, that the LLC she sent this little adjustment notice to was mine. I chuckled softly. My fingers tapped the cover of the notebook. This was going to be interesting. But first, patience. I emailed her back that afternoon. Hi Jess, email received. Will review and respond shortly. Thanks for the update. Short. Cool. Non-committal. Her reply came within 10 minutes. Great. Hope to hear from you soon. Market's hot, you understand. That smug tone practically dripped off the screen. In the meantime, I pulled my lawyer in. We reviewed my lease, the ownership structure, provincial tenancy laws, all airtight. Jessica had no standing to increase rent mid-term, especially not like that. Still, I wasn't interested in a legal battle, not yet. What I wanted was the moment. The one where she'd realize, in front of people she cared about, that she'd overplayed her hand. And that moment, it was coming. Because 2 days later, I got a text from Mom. Family brunch this Sunday. You're coming. Right. Jess will be there. Been too long since we all caught up. Perfect. I took another deep breath. Time to set the stage. Sunday came brisk and clear. We met at a little bistro downtown. One of those places with artfully chipped mugs and $17 omelets. Jessica showed up late as usual, wearing oversized sunglasses and that perfectly tailored trench coat she loved. Emily. She beamed, air-kissing my cheek. You look cozy. Translation. Underdressed. Whatever. I smiled politely. You too. Mom chatted away, blissfully unaware of the tension simmering between us. Jessica played the doting daughter. I sipped my coffee, waiting. Halfway through the meal, as plates cleared and small talk dried up, Jessica casually steered the conversation. So, how's the apartment? She asked, too sweetly. Still loving kits. I hear rents are crazy right now. Mom perked up. Oh, really? I thought you gave Emily a good deal. Jessica smirked. Well, the market shifts. Gotta stay competitive. There it was, the flex. The unspoken I control this. I let the pause hang. Just long enough. Then, calmly. Oh, actually, I've been meaning to bring that up. I own the building. Her fork froze midair. Mom blinked. Jessica's face went blank, then pale. You what? I smiled. Soft and steady. Bought it last year. Through my LLC, didn't want to make a thing of it. But seeing your email this week, figured it was time you knew. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop between the brunch crowd and the clink of cutlery. Jessica opened her mouth, closed it, then forced a brittle laugh. That's not possible. I reached into my bag, slid a thin folder across the table. Deed copies, ownership filings, everything. She stared. No more words came. And in that quiet little bistro, with Mom watching wide-eyed, the game had just shifted. Jessica didn't touch the folder at first, just sat there, blinking too fast, trying to process what she'd just heard. Her hands, always so precise and steady, trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. Mom looked between us, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. Wait, Emily, you own the building. Since when? I kept my tone light. Casual. A little over a year now. Quiet sale. Just seemed like a smart investment. Jessica finally found her voice thin, sharp-edged. You bought it. Behind my back. I gave a small shrug. It wasn't about you. The building came up. I had the opportunity. Business. Jess. Nothing personal. That was a lie. Well, mostly, if I was honest, a tiny part of me had relished the idea of stepping into her world not to outshine her, but to prove to myself that I could, that I wasn't just the artsy little sister renting forever while she built her empire. Jessica sat stiffly, lips pressed into a thin line. And you let me manage it. You didn't say anything. I liked how you ran the place, I said simply. Didn't want to mess with that. But then your email came. I could almost hear the gears grinding behind her eyes. This wasn't how things were supposed to work in her mind. I was supposed to be the one in need, the one grateful for her generosity, not the actual owner of the building she thought she controlled. Jessica recovered quickly. Of course, she was nothing if not sharp. Well, we'll have to review the management agreement, she said, voice cool again. I'm sure there are misunderstandings here. I smiled, pleasant as a spring breeze. Already did. My lawyer's sending you a notice to terminate management services. No hard feelings, of course. Mom gasped softly. Girls, is this really necessary? Jessica's fingers clenched around her napkin. Mother. I cut in gently. Mom, this isn't about family. It's about business. Jess made a decision. So did I. That's all. And truthfully, it wasn't all. Because beneath my calm tone, part of me was still burning. The arrogance of that email, the assumption that she could just triple my rent, push me out, as if I didn't deserve a seat at the table. But I wasn't about to lose composure now. No, this was far from over. And the next moves needed to be deliberate. After brunch, I left first. A light nod to Mom. A polite smile to Jessica. No scene, no drama. I wanted her to stew, to wonder what was coming next. Because behind the scenes, I'd been busy. Over the next week, I worked with my lawyer to officially terminate Jessica's management contract. She'd handled the building decently. Sure, but this wasn't just about performance anymore. It was about boundaries, about respect. A formal notice went out. Clean and airtight. 30 days notice. Per contract, no wiggle room. And while we were at it, I lined up a new management firm, one with stellar reviews and no emotional baggage. Fresh start. Meanwhile, Jessica didn't stay silent. The texts started almost immediately. We should discuss this. You're being impulsive. Let's not escalate things unnecessarily. And then, a bit later, you don't really want to handle all the complexities of ownership. You need me. I read each message slowly, calmly, and replied to none of them. Not yet. Instead, I waited for the next family gathering, a casual Friday dinner at Mom's place. Jessica showed up late again, eyes sharp, jaw tense. Halfway through the meal, while Mom was busy in the kitchen, she cornered me quietly in the hallway. What exactly do you think you're doing? She hissed. I met her gaze. Steady, taking ownership. Literally, you don't understand how this works. Emily, I've been in this business for years. I understand perfectly, I said softly. And you underestimated me. She flushed, mouth tightening. You're blowing this out of proportion. She tried again. Let's talk privately. I tilted my head. Oh, I'm sure we will. Just on my terms. And with that, I walked away, leaving her seething in the hallway. Because the truth was, this wasn't about the building anymore, or even the rent. This was about balance, about finally stepping out from under her shadow. And as far as I was concerned, the game had only just begun. The game had only just begun. That hallway conversation replayed in my head the whole way home. The way Jessica's voice had wavered, not angry, not yet, but rattled. For the first time since we were kids, I saw a crack in her armor. And here's the thing about Jessica. Control was her oxygen. She needed to be the one holding the reins at work, in the family, even in little things like choosing the restaurant or steering a conversation. Growing up, I'd learned early to pick my battles. Let her win. It was easier that way. But this time, there was more at stake than an argument over Sunday brunch plans. And as I sat in my little one-bedroom that night, lease still untouched, rent still locked at the original rate, I started thinking about how we'd gotten here. See? Jessica's power plays didn't start with that rent email. They'd been simmering for years. We weren't born into wealth, not by a long shot. Our parents worked hard, but money was always tight. Jessica, the older one, carried the burden of expectations. First to get a scholarship, first to land a corporate job, first to buy property. And she did. She climbed fast, part grit, part sharp instincts. I admired her for that. I really did, but admiration turned sour over time. Because somewhere along the way, success stopped being about lifting us both up and became about staying one step above me. She never outright said it, but the message was clear enough. Her condo in Cole Harbor, her management company, her carefully curated Instagram life, it all carried an undercurrent of, look what I've done. And you still figuring it out. When I started building my design business, she was polite, supportive on the surface, but quick with the little digs. Must be nice, working from cafes all day. Art's great, but property's where the real money is. Oh, you rent? That's brave. In this market. On and on. So when that building went on the market last year, quiet sale. Low-profile deal, I didn't hesitate. It wasn't about beating Jessica. Not at first. It was about taking a piece of the city for myself. About proving, if only to me, that I could play in her world, too. And now, here we were. 30 days ticking down on her management contract. My phone buzzing every couple of days with texts that grew shorter, sharper. Let's be reasonable. We should meet. Don't make this ugly. And then, late one night, you won't like how this ends. I stared at that last one for a long time. A threat. Maybe. Or just desperation. Either way, I wasn't backing down. In the background, Mom started picking up on the tension. One evening, she called me, her voice gentle, a little worried. "Emily, what's going on with you two? Jessica says you've been difficult." I swallowed a sigh. "Mom, I'm handling my property. That's all. She's upset. She tried to triple my rent." A pause. She did what? I filled Mom in calmly, factually, and for the first time, I heard her gasp. A real one. No polite hedging. "Oh, honey, I didn't know. It's fine," I reassured her, just letting the dust settle. And in truth, I was doing more than that. Because by then, I'd learned something else, something Jessica had overlooked. In her rush to manage me, she'd neglected her own standing. Her reputation in the local property circles was mixed. At best, a few too many aggressive deals, a few burned bridges, and word travels fast in those circles. Quietly, I started making calls, tapping my contacts, lining up not just a new management firm, but potential partners for future projects. If Jessica wanted to play hardball, she was about to find out I had more than one move left. The next family dinner was coming up, a birthday this time. For our aunt. Bigger gathering. More relatives. And I already knew. Jessica would try something there. She couldn't not. Public image mattered too much to her. As the date approached, I prepped carefully, documents in order. Lawyer on standby. New management firm ready to step in. Because whatever card Jessica was about to play, I was ready to flip the table. And this time, there'd be no doubt about who owned what. There'd be no doubt about who owned what. The day of Aunt Marianne's birthday arrived, and Vancouver was in one of those chilly spring moods, sunlight but sharp air. The kind that made your coat feel thinner than it should. The family booked a private room at an upscale seafood place in Yaletown. You know, the type warm wood, low lighting, servers who somehow make pouring water feel like performance art. I arrived early. Deliberately, I wanted a clear seat. Good sight lines just in case Jessica made her move. Not paranoia, just preparation. Sure enough, she showed up fashionably late, in a striking emerald wrap dress, hair pinned perfectly. Every step said I am in control here. I noticed a thin leather portfolio tucked under her arm, subtle, but telling. "Oh, Jessica, so predictable." She made the rounds, air kisses and polite laughter, before sliding into the seat across from me with an overly sweet smile. "Emily," she said smoothly, looking very relaxed. I returned her gaze. "Just as calm? Why wouldn't I be?" Her smile sharpened. "We should chat after dinner. There are things we need to clear up." I let a small, knowing smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Of course, always happy to talk. The meal passed in a haze of oysters, prosecco, and polite conversation. I kept one ear tuned for any shift in Jessica's tone, any sign of her angle. And then, just as dessert was being served there, it was. Jessica cleared her throat delicately and stood, glass in hand. "Before we get to the cake," she began, voice pitched just right for the room. "I wanted to take a moment. As many of you know, I've been managing several wonderful properties these past few years. But sometimes, transitions happen." Polite nods around the table. Jessica continued. "Recently, there's been a bit of confusion around one of my buildings. Miscommunications, shall we say." A pause, eyes flicking to me. "And I'd like to assure everyone it's being handled professionally. No need for concern." I sipped my coffee. Unbothered, my turn would come. Jessica smiled again, turning to our mother. "Mom, I know these things can sound messy, but I've got it under control." That was her move. Control the narrative in front of the family. Amateur hour. I set down my cup gently and rose. "Actually," I said softly, "since it came up, there's something I'd like to clarify as well." Every head turned. Jessica's eyes narrowed, the first flicker of real uncertainty crossing her face. I pulled a slim folder from my bag, lighter than hers, but infinitely more loaded. "For the record," I said calmly, voice carrying in the now quiet room, "the property in question isn't under Jessica's management anymore, nor has it been for several weeks." Murmurs. I continued, unhurried. "As of today, all rights and responsibilities are under my new management firm per the documents filed here." I laid the folder on the table, gently sliding it toward Mom and our aunt. Clean copies, ownership documents, termination letters, confirmation from the new firm. Jessica's mouth opened, closed. Her face had gone a shade paler than the linen tablecloth. One of our uncles leaned in, brows raised. Wait, Emily, you own the building? I nodded. Yes, purchased last year. The murmurs grew louder now, polite, but unmistakably surprised. After all, in this family, Jessica was the property queen. The idea that little sister Emily could quietly make a move like this, well, that was news. Jessica tried to recover. There's more to it than that, she said quickly. It's complicated. It's not, I said gently. Just business. And with that, I sat back down calm, composed, leaving Jessica standing awkwardly at the head of the table. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Cake, gifts, conversation that kept drifting back to, well, hi. My little surprise. A few cousins pulled me aside. Curious, impressed. Even Jessica, she slipped out early, no goodbyes this time. And when I got home that night, my phone was waiting. One text from her. You've embarrassed me. No apology. No ownership. Just blame. I stared at the message for a long moment, then powered the phone off. I had no time for petty guilt trips. Because the real fallout, that was still coming. And I was ready for it. The next week unfolded like a chess match, slow, deliberate, with Jessica making small moves and me watching, waiting. First came the emails. Long, winding paragraphs dressed in faux professionalism. There remain unresolved issues concerning maintenance accounts and outstanding invoices. Given my long-standing relationship with tenants, it would be more efficient if I continued to manage tenant communications through this transition. I trust we can work this out in a mature fashion. Mature. That one made me chuckle. Of course, my lawyer had already handled all of this termination letters, settlement of accounts, clear chain of communication established with the new management firm. There was nothing left for Jessica to manage. Next came the calls to Mom, to my aunt, even to a couple of cousins. The message. Poor Jessica, blindsided by her sister's rash decisions. She spun the narrative well, years of practice there. But this time, it wasn't sticking the way it used to. Turns out, people notice when you try to squeeze your own family for $6, $800 a month. A few days later, the real retaliation began. A certified letter arrived at my door, hand-delivered. Jessica's lawyer this time. Notice of intent to pursue damages for breach of management agreement, defamation of character, and reputational harm. I smiled. There it was, the desperate play. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who called me the next morning. Emily, he said, a note of dry humor in his voice. Don't lose sleep over this. There's no legal ground here. Empty threats. Still, I wasn't taking chances. We drafted a clear, firm response, no emotion. Just facts. Every step of the transition had followed the contract. No defamatory statements had been made. No damages existed. And as an extra precaution, I had my new management firm send notices to all tenants, clearly stating the change in ownership and management, just in case Jessica decided to accidentally interfere. Sure enough, the following weekend, I bumped into one of my neighbors in the hallway, a sweet retired teacher named Mrs. License. Oh, Emily, she said with a knowing smile. I got Jessica's little note, something about ignoring the new managers. I raised a brow. Really? Well, just follow the official notices. Mrs. Lane, everything's already filed, she winked. Of course. Dear, some people don't like losing control. Do they? That made me laugh. But even as Jessica flailed, I stayed steady. Because here's what I knew. The more she pushed, the worse she'd look to the family, to her professional circle, even to herself. And sure enough, the whispers started. A colleague of mine, a fellow designer who sometimes worked with Jessica's old firm, messaged me. Hey, is everything okay with your sister? Word is she's losing clients. Another friend in real estate hinted the same. Jessica's moves weren't just failing, they were backfiring. The harder she tried to regain control, the more cracks appeared in her polished image. And still, she refused to speak to me directly. Then, one chilly Thursday morning, came the final blow. My lawyer called. She filed a formal complaint. No merit. Will file to dismiss, but thought you should know. I thanked him, hung up, and stared out the window at the gray Vancouver sky. It was sad. Really, this wasn't what I'd wanted. Not truly. When I'd bought the building, I wasn't gunning for Jessica. I just wanted my own space, my own win. But somewhere along the way, she'd turned it into a war, and I wasn't about to lose. That weekend, another family event loomed, a cousin's engagement party. I debated skipping it. The thought of another tense room, another round of polite stares. But no, Hiding wasn't my style anymore. I went, head high, heart steady. Jessica was there. Of course, flawless as ever on the outside, but thinner, somehow. The tension in her shoulders, the forced smiles, obvious to anyone paying attention. She didn't approach me, barely looked my way. And when an uncle leaned over during dinner and murmured, "Heard you're quite the property mogul now." With a wink, I just smiled, because by then, everyone knew Jessica's grip had slipped, and soon it would fall completely. It would fall completely. In the days after the engagement party, the mood shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. Jessica had lost the narrative. Family members who'd once hung on her every success story were now cautious. The calls from my cousins came more often now, not to gossip, but to check in, to ask, quietly, what had really happened. And in Vancouver's close-knit property circles, the ripple effects were even clearer. Through a friend at one of the downtown firms, I heard that Jessica had lost 2 longtime clients. Another property owner was reviewing her contract. Word was getting around fast. You can bluff your way through a family dinner. You can't bluff the industry for long. Meanwhile, the final legal filings were wrapping up. My lawyer sent over a clean summary. Jessica's complaint dismissed. No damages, no further action. I read it twice, slowly, savoring every word. And then came my turn to make the final move. It wasn't revenge. Exactly. I didn't want to humiliate her. I wasn't interested in public fireworks. I just wanted clarity, boundaries, no more games. I asked my lawyer to send one last letter, a cease and desist. No more contact regarding the building. No interference with tenants or management. No indirect attempts through family. Simple. Legal. Final. It went out that Monday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. Jessica. For a moment, I debated answering, but no, this needed to be on my terms. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the message came through, her voice, clipped and brittle. "Emily, this is ridiculous. We need to talk. Please, call me back." I didn't. That weekend, Mom invited us both for tea. No special occasion, just tea. I arrived first on purpose. I wanted time to ground myself, to be calm. Jessica came in 20 minutes late, as usual. But this time, there was no sharp smile, no breezy hello, just a stiff nod. We sat, tea poured, small talk fluttered awkwardly. And then, with a sigh that seemed to take effort, Jessica spoke. "I didn't expect this," she said quietly. I set my cup down. "You didn't expect me to fight back." Her eyes flicked away. "I thought I was helping, teaching you the business." A soft laugh escaped me. "By tripling my rent, that's your idea of mentorship." A flush crept up her neck. "I didn't think you'd own it," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Silence settled between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, just the quiet clink of spoons and the faint ticking of Mom's old kitchen clock. And finally, I said, "I'm not trying to ruin you, Jess. I never was, but I won't be pushed around anymore." She swallowed hard. I know, that was the closest thing to an apology I'd get. And honestly, it was enough. I stood, smoothing my coat. "Take care of yourself," I said gently. She looked up, eyes tired, shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. "You too," she murmured. By the time I left that afternoon, a strange peace had settled in my chest. Not triumph, not gloating, just relief. The game was over. The building was mine. The battle won. But more importantly, I'd finally drawn a line in business, in family, in life. And from now on, no one was crossing it. No one was crossing it. In the weeks that followed, the tension ebbed away like the last frost of winter. Slowly, steadily, the new management firm settled in nicely. Tenants were happy. The building ran smoother than ever. I'd even started planning small upgrades, fresh paint in the hallways, new lighting, touches that made the place feel truly mine. Jessica, meanwhile, kept her distance. No more calls, no more emails, not even a stray text. Word through the family grapevine was that she'd retreated a little, licking her wounds. Maybe refocusing her business. And honestly, I hoped she was. Not because I wanted her to disappear, but because, in her own way, she was still my sister. And even after everything, some part of me wished she'd learn from this, grow, change. But whether she did or not, that wasn't my responsibility anymore. One bright Saturday morning, a few months later, I stood on the building's front steps, coffee in hand, sun on my face. I watched as a young couple wheeled a stroller past, as Mrs. Lynn waved cheerfully from her window, as life hummed along. And in that quiet moment, it hit me. I'd done it. Not just the ownership, not just winning the fight. I'd claimed something bigger, a sense of self I hadn't realized I'd been missing. For years, I'd let Jessica set the tone dictate how I saw myself, how I moved through the world, the creative one, the younger sister. But now, I was more an owner, a businesswoman, someone who could hold her ground. Of course, life moved on. Work picked up new design clients, new projects. The building thrived. Family gatherings grew. Easier, not warm exactly. Not yet, but civil. Jessica and I nodded across the table, spoke in polite tones. No more games, no more edge. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was peace. And sometimes, that's enough. So, what did I learn from all this? Honestly, more than I expected. I learned that boundaries matter even with family. Especially with family. I learned that control only works if you let it. And most of all, I learned that quiet strength can speak louder than any argument, any email, any dramatic brunch reveal. And if you're listening to this now, maybe you're facing your own version of this story. A pushy relative, an old power dynamic, a situation where someone thinks they know your place. Let me tell you this, you are stronger than you think. You don't need to shout. You don't need to fight dirty. Just know your worth. Stand your ground. And when the time is right, make your move. Calm, clear, unshakable. And with that, I'll leave you here. Take care of yourself. Be kind but firm. And remember, sometimes the sweetest victory is simply knowing you own the building. Sleep well, my friend.